Our EOC, as you can imagine, where we were at yesterday, is getting a little busier, so we figured it would be a lot easier for us to do any future, present and future press briefings in here. And when this gets busy, we probably will end up moving downstairs to the conference room, because all of this will get much busier as we progress. There's several things that we want to touch on. I don't know if everyone had the chance to see the governor's press conference today, but we want to kind of echo some of the things that came out of that press conference for clarity, to make sure that we're all clear in what we know was said. Of course, the lane reversals. The main lane reversal for South Carolina is Interstate I-26, and I think everyone's aware of that. And then the secondary, of course, or the most second important part of that would be 501 in Conway. Our lane reversals here in Beaufort County is US 21 and US 278. Now, the negotiations we've had with our partners in Columbia, even though that those roads are prepped for reversal, it will be at the last minute. So we'll be putting all the necessary cones and everything that we need on those particular roads, 21 and 278, to prepare ourselves for a lane reversal if in fact we get to that point to where we need to. If we don't see the need like we did during Matthew, then we won't be doing any reversals in Beaufort County. But I assure you that 501 in Conway and Horry County and I-26 will be reversed. Now the question is, at what point in time? And I think that if we all heard, and what we understand is, there's a very, very good possibility that an evacuation will be called for Beaufort County Saturday morning. It will be between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. Now, that decision will be made by the governor probably within the next 24 hours. And when the governor signs that order, that evacuation will stand at that particular time of the order. There was conversation on that press conference of 10 o'clock. That time frame was used quite a few times, so we're trying to gauge ourselves to be prepared no later than 10 a.m. for evacuation, and that's when you'll see the officers take the intersections and start controlling traffic flow. So we will stand up for preparedness on Saturday morning long before 7 a.m. Chatham County, Georgia, our neighbors to the south, they have already indicated that they will do and start their evacuation Saturday morning at 6 a.m. So we expect that it's going to happen at 6 a.m. unless there's some change out of Chatham County. So Chatham County, our friends to the south, 6 a.m. Saturday morning, and we're looking at sometime between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. And I think it's probably going to be around that 10 a.m. Friday, tomorrow, county offices will be closed at noon. Beaufort County schools will close at 11:45 a.m. and 12:45 p.m. So you can also look at Beaufort County schools closing. Today, at 2 p.m. today, medical facilities were ordered to close or prepare for closing. So there's a lot of evacuations that they have to do with patients and other things, and that started today at 2 p.m. My point, before I bring Neil up to go over other things, is Friday is a critical day for us. Friday is your last chance, so to speak, to leave before there's going to be an evacuation. Every hurricane evacuation that we push, we always recommend that you leave long before the evacuation is called. So, not saying that the evacuation will start at 7 a.m., but I'd actually go on record saying I would consider Saturday 7 a.m. to be the evacuation time. I just mentally put that in your mind, that if I'm not out of here by 7 a.m. on Saturday morning, then I won't be able to go the route I want to go. I'll be going the route that I'm made to go. So that'll start Saturday morning. So tomorrow would be a good opportunity for our citizens to go ahead and consider the evacuation for themselves and their families, and make sure that they've prepared to do so, and take the opportunity to take what routes are left. We have our own South Carolina routes, as you well know, but you've got to remember, we've saw this in Hurricane Hugo and Floyd. Florida and Georgia are already evacuating to some extent, Florida being almost 100%. So with Florida coming north and Georgia coming north and west, we're limited to a west and a north evacuation ourselves. So South Carolinians, especially in Beaufort County and on the coast throughout Charleston and all the way up to Horry County, really need to consider taking the opportunity on Friday, tomorrow, to go ahead and take the opportunity to evacuate. Because come 7 o'clock Saturday morning, it's going to be up to us to what route you take. And we have designated evacuation routes. Neil?
Good afternoon, everybody. Yesterday when we met and I started off by telling you, number one, this is not Matthew, and this remains. This is not Matthew. This storm is still a 180 mile an hour Category 5 storm. It's held that for longer than 24 hours. It's setting all kinds of meteorological records. It's a pretty impressive storm to watch, actually, to be learned from it. When we talked yesterday, I told you that Beaufort County was at OPCON 4, and I briefly said that doesn't have anything to do with the public, and it doesn't. It's all an internal thing. And so there's some information out there. We're now at OPCON 3. OPCON 3 means that we have started moving resources. We did this at 12 o'clock today, and we started coordinating in a leaning forward posture all the different things that we need to have to do. We have been meeting and coordinating with all of the fire chiefs of the fire districts, the police chiefs of the municipalities, EMS, the hospitals, the Marine Corps, Parris Island at the air station, and our vendors. We have activated a number of contracts today that will put our vendors in a position to support us through the evacuation and the immediate reentry and response post-storm when the winds die down. The sheriff mentioned the governor's press conference and the evacuation beginning somewhere between 7 and 10 Saturday morning. It's important to understand when that order takes effect, you then have to travel where we tell you to go. We'll be seeing about 300 state troopers arrive in the county tomorrow, along with about 600 National Guardsmen to support us. Big numbers of people. That's what it takes to make this happen, along with the support of all the local authorities. There's just too much for us to sustain ourselves. So you're going to see an increased number of law enforcement, National Guard vehicles, and personnel coming into the county. We're getting ready. We're leaning forward for the governor's order on Saturday morning. What the governor has already ordered, as the sheriff mentioned, is the medical evacuations. All the assisted living facilities, the long-term care facilities, they are all now under DHEC instructions and under governor's order to begin their evacuation plans tomorrow. And they will be moving their residents and their patients to facilities inland that are already designated, already arranged, and you'll see them going out by coach bus, by van, and all the transportation means that they already have in place, but we're helping them coordinate that. That is a DHEC move. We are also, county PALS events have all been canceled as of this afternoon. There'll be no PALS events tonight or tomorrow or into the weekend. County offices close at noon. County schools will be doing their early dismissals. Now, let's get back to the evacuation order. If you want to leave, if you are ready to leave, you need to leave now, because we may do the evacuation, the reversal, we may not, but what happens is, under a mandatory order, when you reach the Beaufort County line, there are no 4-lane roads west of Beaufort County. There's I-95 north and south. It's already seeing increased traffic volumes, and only part of our mandatory evacuation traffic is placed on I-95. The bulk of it is sent west along US 321 out of Hardeeville and US 278 out of Hilton Head and US 21 onto Highway 68 at Yemassee, and then sent west, and then part of it is sent up 303 to Walterboro and put on South Carolina 64 west. The ultimate goal is 3 parallel routes that arrive at Interstate 20 at various points along Interstate 20 between Augusta and Batesburg-Leesville. So if you wait until the mandatory and you're in one of those lanes that gets sent west, you're going to wind up on Interstate 20 between Aiken and Batesburg-Leesville. If you're in one of the lanes that's placed on I-95, you're going to be sent all the way north to Florence. You're not going to be able to intersect I-26. It will be blocked to northbound 95. You will be sent continually north. Oh, well, okay, fine. I know how to get off at this exit or that exit. Those are not designated routes, and you will wind up at an intersection somewhere out in the middle of nowhere where a whole bunch of law enforcement officers are telling you to stop, and the traffic coming on the parallel routes west will continue moving west. So if you want to go where you want to go, when you want to go there, you need to leave tomorrow. Because when the governor orders that mandatory evacuation, you will go where law enforcement tells you to go. So think about that. Keep that in mind. You're going to wind up on I-20 if you wait, either at Florence or somewhere in the Aiken area. That's very important. We have a very unique situation in Beaufort County, Defusky Island. Approximately 400 residents. The only way on and off the island is by boat. The ferries are running on normal schedules. They'll run on normal schedules tomorrow. They'll run on normal schedules on Saturday. On Sunday, the last boat will be at 12 noon. So if you live on Defusky and you intend to evacuate Defusky, you must be gone by 12 noon. Law enforcement and fire personnel will be going door to door to make sure everybody's got that word over there and make sure that they have the information of what's happening. Now, once the mandatory orders put in place, the tolls will be lifted on the ferry boats and you'll be able to travel without paying the fee. But the last boat is at 12 noon. According to the National Weather Service, I don't want to go. This is the current forecast for the onset of tropical storm force winds, and we're looking sometime reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds is Sunday evening at 8 p.m. That boat will not travel and the seas will be getting rougher. Calabogue Sound is exposed to the ocean. It will be getting rougher and rougher Sunday afternoon. We're not going to ask the captain to place his boat and his passengers in harm's way. We feel like noontime is the last absolutely safe time that we can make the passage, and after that, there will be no more boats. And so if you're on Defusky and you want to evacuate, you need to be gone by that 12 noon boat. And this is subject to change because the track, is constantly adjusting and constantly being refined by the forecasters. But Sunday evening, the conditions are going to deteriorate to the point where we're not going to be moving the boat anymore.
And while you're on this graph, I want everyone can see this graph pretty good. This is something that mathematically Neil and I worked on, and this is the thing that you need to look at. You see where it says Sunday 8 p.m., Monday 8 p.m.? That's a 23-hour range. 23 hours is what we calculated that you would be looking at tropical force winds in Beaufort County. That's the front end that passes, the middle, and the back end that passes. So you're looking at a long duration of time where you're going to have heavy winds throughout the county. And you see it as that, and if you look at that cone, the way it's positioned now, I mean, you've got Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina for sure are in that cone. But we don't know exactly where that landfall will be. But the consideration here and what we're trying to push out as much as we can, that is a very long duration of time to have that type of wind force. And that wind force, to us, you always plan for the worst and hope and pray for the best. But, I mean, you're looking at somewhere in the category or Cat 3 range, and winds anywhere between, I think it's 100 and 125 miles an hour. You need to imagine that for a moment, a 23-hour period of time of winds sustained at anywhere around 100 miles an hour, and just use that for a round number. That's unbelievable. This is far, far, far worse than anything that any kind of issue that we have with Matthew. And I know we've got Steve Riley here as well, and I want to welcome everyone that's here. The mayors, thank you for coming. Town managers, Mr. Kubik, Josh Gruber, and everyone. And you're welcome at a point when we get here, you know, to make comments or, you know, or to do anything you'd like to do with us, because we need to make sure that we stress to our citizens throughout the county just what we're dealing with here. And if you'd go to those three scenarios at one point
Right.
when you finish this,
Right.
because, you know, there's only one that looks decent, the other two look bad, so.
So during Matthew, we only had about 12 hours of sustained winds above tropical storm force. And think about the damage we had. And we only had a maximum gust recorded of 88 mile per hour at Hilton Head Airport. Air Station recorded 58 mile per hour. That's not even hurricane force. 24 hours of what we saw the worst of during Matthew. Plus, that's 3 high tides minimum. That's just piling water on top of each other. The current models are estimating between 10 and 15 foot of storm surge. So this is not going to be anything that that anyone in this county has ever experienced before. These are our significant impacts, potential impacts from the National Weather Service. Wind, extreme impacts. Storm surge, extreme. Rainfall flooding, significant. They're looking at 12 inches or more of rainfall. Tornadoes elevated depending on the landfall track. If we're to the east of the storm, if it goes in Florida and we're to the east of it, that will elevate. And then offshore, extreme. So anybody with boats needs to be somewhere else besides offshore. These are the 4 scenarios. We've added a 4th one, simply being the offshore one, and you can see the National Weather Service gives it very little confidence that that one's going to happen. That's more like Jose's track that's following behind it, and that's really what we want. If we've got to deal with Irma, we don't want to have to deal with those Jose 5 days later. Number 4 is the worst case for us, and that's the one looking like the greatest. You can see it jumps 10, 10, 30, and 50% for number 4. So as the models continue to solidify, as we get closer and that window narrows and that cone narrows, we're looking at number 4 for us. Significant impacts of a Category 3 storm, pushing tides in here, at least 3 high tides back to back with no opportunity for the water to go out. So each tide comes in, the next one comes in on top of it. So we'll talk about transportation just a minute and sheltering. The Red Cross runs the shelters for us. There are no shelters in Beaufort County for hurricanes. There are buildings that have been designated for post-storm should we need them, and we probably will. But there are none rated under the Red Cross criteria for actual hurricanes. All of our shelters are in our host counties: Hampton, Colleton, Jasper, Ballendale, and Barnwell counties. So what will happen is, if you choose to go to a shelter, you will be directed west along the hurricane routes. If you're looking for a shelter, there will be signage pointing you to the shelters when you get to those counties. If you need transportation, Palmetto Breeze is our transportation coordinator. Go to their website. They have all the lists of the pickup points. They have consolidated pickup points in each geographic area, Helena, Hilton Head, Bluffton, City of Beaufort, etc. And then they will take you to the shelters. You'll be identified by a colored wristband so that you'll know when it's over with. You keep the band. When it's over with, if I was on the red bus, you get back on the red bus. It'll take you back to the pickup point when the time comes. That could be a considerable period of time. Category 3 impacts are going to be tremendous. You know, we got electricity back up to some places in Beaufort 3 days after Matthew. That's probably not going to happen here. Stormwater, 3 tides on top of each other. It's probably not going to happen for a while. Be prepared to be gone for a while. Take all of your important papers, take your medicines, etc. The Red Cross shelters are not able to accept pets. They're just not prepared for it, and that's an issue that we continue to try a challenge we continue to try to overcome, but they're not prepared for it yet. So think about that. There are no hotels. It's my understanding there are no hotels available in South Carolina now, period. So you're out on that. You're having to go further west into Tennessee and other states to get that situation. Post-storm. You ready to go there? You want to?
Go ahead and talk about reentry.
All right. Reentry passes. Beaufort County instituted a reentry pass system after lessons learned from Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Andrew. We watched what happened in other jurisdictions, and we realized we needed to address the situation. The pass system is designed for those people who support the first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS personnel, and deliver life safety measures or support those who immediately deliver them. It's not part of the economic recovery of Beaufort County. Because once we're ready for that, we've saved all the folks that we can save. We've pushed open the road so we can move fire trucks and ambulances down. That's when the roadblocks come up and everybody can come home. But the reentry passes, and we have been inundated. We bring this up because we have been absolutely inundated for the last 3 days with people wanting reentry passes to the point where it's become a distraction that we can't do the other things we need to be doing. The reentry passes are for those who are providing life safety or immediately supporting those who are providing life safety. And so that's the situation with the passes. So I'd ask that, if you're not in that category already, please refrain from the phone calls, the text messages, the emails, because we've got a lot of other things we need to do now and focus on rather than the reentry passes. We're where we need to be on that. And so that's where we'll be. Our goal is to get the roadblocks open and let people come home and see their homes, see their businesses just as quickly as we possibly can. But our criteria is a functioning emergency room that can take patients, live power lines out of the road, and the roads cleared just wide enough, the main roads, that we can move an ambulance and a fire truck up and down. Not the side streets, not the residential neighborhoods, just the main roads. So, the others are going to take a long time. But if we can do that in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days, whatever the damage does to us, that's our goal. Once we've accomplished that, functioning emergency room, power lines out of the road, and a first push by Public Works, then we're going to lift the roadblocks. We might put curfews in place, that sort of thing. But you can come home and at least survey your damage and see where you're at and what you need to do to begin to rebuild. And then we begin to rebuild the economy of Beaufort County. But the reentry passes are for those people who are providing life safety or immediately supporting those who are providing life safety.
I want everybody to know too, on the reentry passes that we've issued, that have been issued, we've got, I think it's 5,600 and some odd reentry passes have been issued. So that's a lot of passes. And those passes are for those critical needs. This storm, again, and to put it in perspective for everyone to see, to have a visual, and I think everyone's been watching the Weather Channel here probably for the past couple of weeks. I think we've all seen what's happened in Houston with the flooding and all the other that hurricane brought to Houston and that area, not only Houston but Louisiana as well. But it's like Neil said yesterday, and it's probably the best way to say it. This is not Hurricane Matthew. Not at all. What we experienced during Hurricane Matthew was amazing of its own, and what this county went through, and did a fantastic job of recovering from and still recovering today from Hurricane Matthew. This storm is offering a heck of a lot more in the form of damage than what Matthew gave us. So this is not hurt, as well as family members. Even family members of law enforcement, our first responders who are staying, their families are all survey the damage to your home. I mean, you're begging for somebody to let you in just to see this office. So our helicopter is here in Beaufort, and as soon as the storm passes and we can get airborne, we're going to survey the county from the air. That's probably going to be about the only way we're going to be able to travel the county for some time. And we'll show as much video as we possibly can of the damage out Beaufort County. There's been requests to start a drone service where we can actually go to particular addresses when requests come in, just to them to have a visual of their home. We completely understand that. So trying to get power lines out the road, we're looking at damage from floodwaters and those type things, moving trees where vehicles can pass, especially emergency vehicles. And once we get that done, we're going to let you back. But it just takes time. I wish we could tell you how many days it would be after Irma blew through that you were going to be allowed to check in. Just don't know. The storm will dictate to us how long that will be and what the pace of recovery is. And that's the best equation that we can give at this particular time. We do have the experience going through Matthew. We all have the experience of what we dealt with during Hurricane Matthew. This offers a whole new challenge than what Matthew gave us. So be glad to open it up for questions or comments from our elected officials here in the room.
Just a question, Sheriff. As I understand it, there's a state system for applying for reentry passes as well for like restaurant owners or hardware store owners or those types of businesses. How does that tie in with the passes that you're?
Well, for our reentry passes, it does not tie in at all. The Secretary of State's office, they do issue those passes. You can actually do it online. And we will recognize the fact that you are a business owner. And I know that sheet of paper that you print has reentry pass on it, but it's not a reentry pass. Only the ones that are issued through emergency management. They're green cards, and it's an official reentry pass.
In your mind, is there benefit to having a staged reentry in terms of you have the emergency personnel that you're talking about earlier and those that support them closely, followed by those types of businesses, restaurants, grocery stores, et cetera, and then citizens, or?
Well, if you remember, we did that last year.
Did you find that working well?
It did work well, and I'm sure we'll do that again. But we can't tell you what business is more important at right now, but we'll know at that particular time. What we did on Hilton Head last year, if you recall and remember, the gates were going to open at 3 p.m. Well, long before that, we started letting people back that could open a restaurant, that could open a CVS or a Walgreens, who could operate and open a gas station. You know, what are the benefits to those returning at 3? We tried to get those in place first to make life a little easier. But, you know, it helped to some extent, and I think it will help again. But then it also added a whole new challenge. And Steve, I know you know what that is, because, you know, our lift stations were challenged early on, shortly after 3 p.m. Because of power outages and then, you know, the sewer system and all that stuff. So I mean, those things have to be considered as well. But as soon as we can get folks back, we want them to come home, and we know the cost associated with it. Mr. Cubic.
Just Sheriff, if you reiterate that the focus is when our hospitals close, that we have to work with our medical community to make sure that when we allow reentry, we also have capacity to provide medical services. And so the hand-in-glove relationship on reentry also expands into the medical community.
It does, because, you know, we experienced that in Hurricane Matthew. At a certain point, prior to the storm, all of our medical facilities within the county shut down. We understand that. The closest hospital that we had, not only for our citizens but also our first responders, was Orangeburg. Everything else was triaged on you know, in place, and we were using ambulances to do triage work on injuries, and the transports were having to be transported all the way to Orangeburg. So that's a part of the reentry plan. We have to get the hospitals up and running. We have to get medical facilities open, because after a storm, during and after a storm, you're going to have injuries. You know, and with this kind of storm, not only are you going to have injuries from trees falling, or injuries from trying to run a chainsaw, a snake bite. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, are the issues that have come up. But we have to have medical folks in place. Yes, ma'am.
Just maybe for you to expand on, since we have the press here, maybe the state designated passes, they're not getting in right on, you know, they may have on that pass, does it say you are, you know, because they're going to get that pass, because I heard some last year we had a state pass.
There was a lot of
Maybe you could expand on that so we can understand it, pass along, and also the press.
I wish we had one here. Do you got one in the office
Not that I can find.
that we can use for an example? But it's basically a Xerox copy, you know, of a printout, and it basically shows that you're an owner of a business through the Secretary of State's office. But to the side, it said reentry pass. You know, and it probably has its intent and its purpose, but not for a reentry after a storm, a post reentry. So, I mean, you can look at those passes, and I promise you, when we had our post at the Hilton Head Bridge until Tuesday at 3, we saw plenty of them. Almost everyone that pulled up there had one of those copies, and it had reentry pass. Now, the sad part of it is I honestly believe that most of those folks, when they pulled up to that road check, that roadblock, honestly thought that that pass was to get them back on Hilton Head, and that's what they
I
believed.
think they may still be under that
Yeah.
impression.
And I'm sure we'll see it again. Neil?
There's language in the law that authorize those passes that clearly states, and when the people fill out the application, it's clear there, if they take the time to read the whole thing, it says that local authorities have the final say on it, on whether or not it's accepted at security checkpoints. And it's been my understanding, because I did a lot of inquiries after Matthew, because that was a fairly new system where ours has been in place for about 10 years. It was my understanding that the intent of that law was for the trucking companies, motor freight companies, to allow them to move where they needed to move, and then it kind of morphed into what it has become in a very short period of time. But there's language very clearly in the law, and I think it's actually on the document you print out, that says local authorities have the final say. And you know, we tend to overlook things we don't want to see, or small print. We all know about the small print. And so it's very important that the folks that have those will understand, we need, like the sheriff says, we want them back, but we need them back when it's safe and when we've met those goals I talked about. Because you know, accidents happen, whether it's at a restaurant or a gas station or at home, accidents happen. If we don't have an emergency room to take that victim to, they're going to Orangeburg or somewhere else that's accepting patients. And that's a long ambulance ride when you're in trouble.
And Mayor Bennett, and you better than anyone know, you know, when the governor lifted the order during Matthew, it was your decision when people could come back to Hilton Head, and that's the decision that you made. And I mean, and those are the orders that we took. We didn't let anyone back on the Hilton Head until 3 p.m. on Tuesday, but we also had the ability and the opportunity, as we spoke earlier on the phone on that Tuesday, is and work with the chamber. What would be a good recovery when we do open the road at 3 p.m.? And you know, and we will look at that every time. We've changed and modified some of our roadblocks. Again, they're different in different settings than they were during Matthew, and they're also we're referring to them now as rolling roadblocks. Is when we can move them and allow more people back to their communities, then we're going to move them. But again, how clear are the roads? How much flooding we got? How many power lines are down? What's the tree issue? The tree damage? And I don't think. Well, I do know for a fact that you know, when we pushed our way on to Hilton Head that Saturday morning, and I know Steve was right ahead of me. It was an unbelievable sight to see what tree damage we had on 278 on Hilton Head and Palmetto Bay Road and all the other roads. Cross Island was the only road that didn't have tree damage. That's because there were not any trees near it. And I don't think not a lot of people didn't see it. You know, whatever photographs were shown or whatever video was taken, they had the opportunity to see that. But again, that was a very, very mild, weak Category 1. And we had 12 inches of rain during Matthew. We expect to have 12 inches of rain or more during the storm. We didn't have near the surge of water that we thought we were going to have, but I expect that we'll have a heck of a lot more this time than we had then. So this thing just offers a whole new challenge to the county of Beaufort, especially on our barrier island. So, and you know, as you look at these different scenarios, it's offering a very huge challenge to the entire state of South Carolina. So we're gonna have to take one step at a time and making sure we're making the right decisions based on public safety. Yes, ma'am.
Just real quick, packet, actually just put that out from the sheriff's department about the reentry. So it'd be good for us to share that, I think.
Okay.
As in our rules. Says some early reentry passes will not be honored in Beaufort County. So I just think getting it out, the more we can get that out, at least they'll be aware of it.
Completely agree with you. And Bob and our PIOs in the back of the room shaking their head, yes.
I feel Joy shaking.
We've especially got a copy of that.
Joy is.
They were all nodding. They were doing it this way though, but yeah. Mayor Billy?
I think the coordination among the PIs will solve a lot of problems. biggest concern, and I think it's, you'd find it with the mayors and probably your county council members, is the phone rings all day, what do I do, where do I go? Is the one real number to send people to the 1-800?
For recovery, yes,
Yeah.
sir.
What about,
Right now,
I'm handicapped, I live in such and such apartments, I don't have a way to get out of here for any money to pay for anything.
yes, sir, if you're in that situation, special needs person, Palmetto Breeze, you can go to their website,
They don't have an internet.
okay, then they can call Palmetto Breeze. And Palmetto Breeze has a transport service that will pick up the pre-qualified special needs
Now,
patients.
and let me make this easier, and Neil.
I'll get into the weeds.
No, Neil is saying exactly what he should say when it comes to the plan and how we work this. We're in a position now that whatever we need to do in-house, and the director of our communication center is sitting right back here in the back of the room, and whatever we need to do in our communications room to facilitate these moves and these needs, we'll do. We raise our children to tell them that when you need help, you call 911. We'd never want 911 abused or misused, but in situations like this, if we've got somebody who has no assistance and no help and no ability to move themselves, or no one to call to help them move from the location that they're in, we need to be notified. And then our ESF desk, it's in our command center, we'll find someone and we'll put somebody on that mission. But we always tell people, if you need help, call 911. So my offer is, and I'm getting a shake, I'm getting a nod back here, yes. If we have, and look, we'll make this message very clear, if there are people out in Beaufort County that need assistance, we'll find you help, dial 911. Because they probably can't find a number for Palmetto Breeze. If we were to tell you what that number is right now, if you don't have a pen handy, you're not going to be able to write it down. And if you don't use internet, then you're not going to get this information. But a lot of people watch TV, and we'll do it on the radio. Bob will also make this known on the radio, the different radio channels. If you need help in Beaufort County, you dial 911, someone's coming to get you. Yeah.
Thank you.
But if you need a ride to the grocery store or something, don't use 911. Isn't that right, Sean? Comments, concerns, things you would like to see us look at, challenges.
Given some of the way you described the Florida evacuations, Georgia evacuations, South Carolina coastal evacuations, all converging near Saturday morning, what's your degree of confidence of being able to move people safely that haven't evacuated early?
We've been hearing war stories all day in the command center on just how bad traffic was on I-95. I've gotten to a point where unless I see it, smell it, taste it myself, I'm not going to believe it. So we started looking at traffic cameras on the interstate. It's not that bad. I mean, we've heard that there were borderline traffic jams. Traffic was moving at 25 miles an hour, and it was we started looking at cameras all up I-95 and some on I-26. I-26 looks a little thick. There's no question about that. But I-95 still looks real good. Not a lot of southbound traffic, but a steady stream of northbound traffic. So I feel good about that. I feel good that and I'm sorry for any part of Florida or South Carolina, Georgia that gets hit by the storm, but Florida is actually moving its citizens quite well. Now, granted, I mean, they're moving them from the Keys to Miami and right on up the coast, but at some point we may see that the interstates in South Carolina get a little thick because of that 8-hour, 10, 12-hour movement. And we may see, but the benefit to us here is that most of your Georgia traffic goes west. So we won't be exposed to a lot of northbound traffic on I-95. So I think right now, if people continue to view this storm and look at what potential this storm has on impact wherever they may be on the coast of Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, I think for the most part, a lot of people have already left or are leaving currently, and I think we'll see a big movement on that tomorrow. I know that gas stations have been inundated over the past 24 hours. I rode around the Bluffton area last night to about 10 o'clock, and all the gas stations in that area either were out of gas or they had lines around the block. I know Neil did the same thing here on the Beaufort side. And there were a lot of people gassing up. There were a lot of people gassing up, but there were also a lot of people gassing up 5-gallon cans. To me, that's not a good sight. That suggests generators to me when somebody. But of course, Neil took the opposite approach and said, "No, that's gas for your car when you're stuck in traffic, where you won't run out." I think it's generators. But you know, we did see that. But you know, but the indication is a lot of people took the opportunity to gas up, hopefully in preparation to be leaving the county very soon. Yeah, here's a picture of right now. It's a traffic cam shot I-95 and I-26. Very peaceful. Looks like a nice drive time.
Looks like a nice drive.
But you know, don't know what to expect. Hopefully, it stays like this. Now, our hopes is that our evacuation come Saturday is as good as it was during Hurricane Matthew. About as smooth as I've ever seen one. Matthew was it was unbelievable. We never put a law enforcement officer in an intersection to direct traffic because there was no traffic to direct. Hopefully, we'll see that again.
I hope so too.
Questions?
I have a question for you. Just to clarify for people who are wondering, just because we've covered a lot. So are people, can we go over evacuations where they stand now, going into the weekend, especially as weather continues to change and as models continue to change, coming down to local level versus state level for the evacuation?
Did you hear everything she said?
Is your question, do we make
Where
it?
do we stand now and the timing for this weekend going into again?
In South Carolina, it's central authority, and the governor makes all of those decisions, and we comply with those decisions.
Right.
So,
So as it stands now,
As it stands now, it appears, we haven't got it etched in stone because the order has not been signed by the governor. It appears to be sometime between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. Saturday. So we're asking people to really give Friday the consideration to leave on your own before anything is signed by the governor. Now, Chatham County, their evacuation begins at 6 a.m. Saturday morning.
is there anything, you've talked about lessons that you've learned, is there anything lessons that you've seen, neighbors learn that might be good to bring up for evacuation and also reentry?
I mean, there are a lot of lessons learned. I learn something every day. I don't learn a lot from my neighbors because, I mean, I wasn't home during the storm or anything. I was here. But have you got some lessons learned?
I got
Okay.
one for sure. You're evacuating. We're encouraging you to leave your utilities on, let the storm take them down. But if you've got perishables in your refrigerator or your freezer that are going to spoil when the power goes out and you're gone for 5 or 6 days, take them with you when you leave. That way you don't come back to that mess, because if a freezer defrosts and everything in it does, you're going to ruin the freezer also. So if you clean it out, take it with you, you're in much better shape. That's definitely a lesson learned. I know a number of people lost freezers full of stuff and then lost the freezer on top of that.
Do you have anything to say to people who might use this? You talked about people who might be taking advantage of the gasoline, but also people who might be taking advantage of people while they're gone in their homes, especially so many homes and neighborhoods here in Beaufort County. Any message to people who might be taking advantage of that or seeing an opportunity to strike?
I think the Attorney General from I think it was Georgia Attorney General last night or yesterday afternoon, I thought that her comments were absolutely excellent. And there's zero tolerance. We're not going to allow anyone to take advantage of someone else in a situation like this or any other time. And the enforcement of that, of course, is through the Attorney General's office for price gouging. what we do is we're law enforcement, we're gonna stay in the road, on the streets, in the communities until our cars are blown around. And at that point in time, we don't have a choice. We have to retreat for that period of time to where we can actually secure the equipment that we need to operate and utilize to do our job, but also for the protection of the first responders. But, I mean, the wind's gonna have to push us around before we'll leave the communities. And as soon as that wind allows us back out, we'll be back. Now, there were some reports, not a lot of reports of break-ins, burglaries in the last storm, not a lot of problems with looting. And quite frankly, we had more people evacuate Beaufort County than what we actually thought initially that left. We had a pretty good number of leaving. We've got a lot of law enforcement here in Beaufort County, not only with our municipal police departments and one of our police chiefs is in the back of the room now, but from the Sheriff's Office, Beaufort PD, Bluffton PD, Port Royal PD, the Highway Patrol, SLED, DNR, all the other agencies that are going to be here, the National Guard. Beaufort County is well covered. And will be well covered not only before, during, but also after the storm.
Thank you.
Sheriff, you mentioned the 911 call center, and if people needed help to call, but Chatham County is running into kind of this problem where people are calling for, like, should I evacuate? Should I take my dog? Is there a pet-friendly hotel? That kind of pre-evacuation information. Can you kind of, for the folks at home, differentiate between why you should call 911 and where you should go for other evacuation information?
You know, we've already been, she's shaking her head. We've already have already been inundated with all of those different calls. I mean, it's amazing how many phone calls have come in, not only to the emergency management office, but also the communications center. And we get those calls pretty well all the time. 911 is an easy number to remember, and it's an easy number to use. In this particular situation, if you're calling 911 to ask those particular questions, then those calls will be transferred to the appropriate number, because we can't tie up our 911 lines. Yeah, there are people that actually need them for the right reasons. So we will hook flash and transfer those calls. And there's some situations where that call is going to get lost. But if you need help from a first responder, law enforcement, EMS, or anyone else, and you're stranded in an area and you cannot leave because the fear of flooding, and you just need to be transported, or you need help, then use 911. That's what we teach you to do from childhood. Don't abuse it, but use it if you need it. Yes, ma'am.
Question. This is one question that comes up all the time that I've been asked many times. Bridges. When do bridges close?
35 or 39.
The only bridge that the drawbridge gets chained where it cannot open to boat traffic at 25-mile-per-hour sustained winds, and DOT makes that decision. So the two drawbridges in northern Beaufort County. The rest of the bridges, we're not going to erect roadblocks. The wind will take care of that. You can't cross them at high winds. That's why we run to shelter. So we're not going to erect roadblocks or anything like that to keep people from crossing them. That is something that they have to be. They have to look at and say, it's not safe to cross it. I'm not going to cross it. But there won't be any roadblocks out there because that puts our people in harm. But when we run to shelter, that means you can't cross bridges and causeways anymore. It's not safe.
We're a coastal community, as you know. We have plenty of bridges. Some long, some short, some high, some, regular level. But imagine going over the Broad River Bridge or the Hilton Head Bridge or the Whale Branch Bridge with 100-mile-an-hour winds, or, in some cases, sustained 50-mile-an-hour winds with maybe 130-mile-an-hour gust. That's not the place you want to be. And it doesn't help to go faster thinking I can get off this bridge a little bit quicker and it might not hurt me as well. But, we inspected, I say we, DOT inspected a lot of the bridges after Matthew, and the bridges checked out to be okay. Keep in mind, Neil said it earlier, at Hilton Head Airport, the strongest wind that we had was 88 miles an hour. We expect a lot worse than that. And the last place you want to be, again, is driving a car on a causeway or a bridge, especially with water on both sides. great question though. Anything else?
Can you just reemphasize the fact that it's not gonna be safe for people who decide to stay here during the brunt of the storm?
It's
That you
not.
guys- That it's not safe, that you guys will not be able to get to them once the brunt of the storm hits?
You know, and Neil said it yesterday, and I'll say it again, and I'll let Neil speak on this more in detail. But you know, I'm very, very guarded as a sheriff. I'm very guarded. I've been doing this a long time, and when the word retreat is not something that I use. I don't like that word. Very seldom use that word. It may be fitting in times like this to talk about how we will retreat when the winds get. I mean, to pull me off the road and doing my job, you're gonna have to blow my car around pretty good for me to stop. And that's how law enforcement officers are. They don't give up. They stay in the fight and they do what they need to do because that's their job, and they're all committed to doing so. So sometimes it's a demand. You have to give a direct order to pull someone off the street when they're in an area. For an example, we start pulling our guys and gals back. The wind may be a lot stronger on Hilton Head or in the Bluffton region than it is in Sheldon. The guys and gals in Sheldon are going, you know, it's not that bad. Why are they calling us off the road? But so we've already talked about doing it in a sequence based on wind. We're going to stay undercover, if you will, in protection for a duration that is not safe for the officer or the equipment. If our equipment is damaged, if it's flooded, or and then we're at a loss because we can't get to you if we don't have the vehicles to utilize to get there. Now we've got some vehicles in place at the sheriff's office we've acquired over the past year that are capable of going pretty well everywhere we need to go, and those will be utilized. Neil will have an opportunity with a helicopter to look at things from an aerial platform, so it will, and that will navigate kind of some of the areas that we need to go to. But we're going to get officers off the road for safety reasons, and as soon as that opportunity allows us to go back out throughout the communities, we'll be there. And last year during Matthew, when we made our way to certain communities in the county, it was foot patrol. There was no driving. You could drive 100 yards and you'd end up to a pine tree or an oak tree or just a power line. So we did a lot of checks in a lot of communities on foot. We have four-wheelers. We have contracts with with a lot of opportunities out there to put vehicles out throughout the county. So we're not going to be off the road long. Even though that wind, that time frame I showed you is about 23 hours. Hopefully we'll be back out in there long before then, and long before the worst is there. Neil, you want to add to that any?
Just I want to expound on the decision to stay by the individual resident of Beaufort County. If you make the decision to stay, and I've said this 100 times, you're taking on the full responsibility of what public safety does for you. Because in that period of time that we're in the shelter and we're taking the 911 calls, if something happens to you, a tree comes through your roof, your house catches fire, you're physically injured, you have a heart attack, anything like that, or a family member, a loved one does, you're taking on the responsibility that you're going to handle that yourself for whatever period of time we cannot get to you. 3 high tides worth of storm surge, and a causeway washes out. It happened to us at Harbor Island last October. The bridge was intact, the causeway was not. And that's where our weak points are. The bridges are built solid, but the causeways are dirt and gravel topped with asphalt. They are subject to inundation, they're subject to erosion. So you're taking on the responsibility that I can repair a broken leg, or I can deal with a heart attack, or I can deal with my house catching fire, or all the critters that are going to try to join you in your home if your home is still dry, because they don't like the water either. And so I can deal with the alligators and the copperheads and the water moccasins and the raccoons that want to come in with me. So think about that. That is the decision you're taking. And so that question of responding to you, we're gonna queue the calls up, but you're on your own for whatever that period of time is. And even once we get back out on the road, we may drive 200 yards, and that's as far as we can go before we get out and start cutting trees. And you're 3 miles away, or you're 5 miles away, and we're cutting one tree at a time to get to you. The resources will be coming. The federal, the state, the National Guard, the helicopters, the Coast Guard, all those agencies will be coming. But to start with right now, they're in Texas, or they're being sent back to their home bases to rehab and repair because they have been absolutely exhausted physically, the people and the equipment. So there will be a delay in getting those resources. If Harvey, let me get my storm straight, Jose, Harvey, Matthew, and what's the other one out there, Katasha now? If Irma strikes South Florida first as a Cat 4, Cat 5, a whole lot of resources are going to be headed that way to help them before the storm ever even gets to us. North Carolina deployed National Guardsmen to Florida yesterday to be ready to help. They went through South Carolina to get there. So, the resources will be coming, but you're taking on the responsibility that I can do it myself. And frankly, I don't want to set a broken leg, especially my own.
One of the things, the question, State Secretary,
Oh.
one of the questions that came, and we're going to deal with the reality that people are going to stay. There's no question about that. I think yesterday I said those that stayed last time are leaving and those that left are staying. So we're going to deal with folks staying. And there's lessons learned from Matthew of those that stayed. So, if you're staying, make sure that you have plenty of water, that you have the appropriate type food that you can keep. If you have a generator, make sure you have plenty of gas for your generator. Do all the things that you need to help yourself, because you probably are going to be helping yourself for a period of time that's undetermined at this particular point. But the other thing that we had lessons learned was carbon monoxide poisoning based on generator use. That is something that I don't think a lot of people consider. Where should that generator be placed? Are they placing a generator in their garage and then running an extension cord from the garage inside the house and leaving the door gap? Those things happen. If you're going to run a generator, if you're going to run a chainsaw, if you're going to do anything like that, make sure you know what you're doing. Take a few minutes, read the instructions, and invest in the opportunity to do it by doing it the right way. But you got to be extremely careful with this stuff. Freezers, your ice box, freezer chest, and those type things, they'll stay. They'll be in good shape for hours and hours as long as you don't open them. As soon as you crack the lid and open it, that's when you've got a problem. It's kind of like people grilling. Grill works fine until you kept checking it to see how it's going. The same thing with a refrigerator or what have you. So if you're planning to stay, which we know that those that will, they're just, be extremely careful, because it's going to be difficult to get you out of where you're at or get somebody to you. And that's, in a nutshell, is what Neil's saying. We'll get to you, but it may take us a while. Anything else? Yes.
Also to that point, I know we've talked about how this is a record storm. For the people who are staying, who might be curious enough to maybe want to peek out the window to see what this record storm looks like in person, would you talk about the dangers of that, or what it's like to face yourself against the window and there's sustained winds and debris flying around?
There are plenty of videos on YouTube where experiments are done of launching a 2x4 at 100 mile per hour, or I love the one with the plastic straw going through the sheet of plywood in hurricane force winds. Look them up. That will tell the story better than anything I can say. And I want to go back to what Sheriff and I were talking about, vehicles on the roadways. Again, there's plenty of video out there of high-profile vehicles, motorhomes, 18-wheelers being blown over on open stretches of road in just 50 and 60 mile an hour winds. We see that. The Weather Channel shows those videos regularly. They're all over YouTube. Think about that. You're crossing a causeway and a 100 mile an hour wind gets you, water on both sides, you're in the water. So that's why we go do what we have to do, and that's why we encourage folks. We run from the water, we hide from the wind.
Thank you all.
I got one more question. As far as resources for people who are thinking, I'm gonna be out of work for a week, 2 weeks, where can somebody go is that a FEMA sign up as far as reimbursements or anything like that? Like, how are they gonna get paid? What kind of?
Josh, you want to talk about that?
As part of the recovery fund.
Come on up. Everybody wants to see you.
So close. So close. You gotta get your voice.
That's right. As part of the recovery functions, we work with various nonprofit agencies like United Way and others to try and help provide services to people after the storm. So that information will be made available. It's going to be broadcast to the sheriff's office, through the county. There's going to be multiple areas where you can call in, and they'll direct you and put you in contact with services.
There's another number I want to toss out there that's easy to remember. It's 211. That's a service we have in Beaufort County through the United Way, that a lot of these general questions that you have, 211 will direct you to the resources. We get about 1,100 calls a month on that already, and I'm sure it'll ramp up during this. But they have a bank of folks that are sitting there that have a whole plethora of information. So pretty much they can answer any question you call, where to get food, where to get gasoline, that sort of stuff. 211 will help them. But again, like Sheriff said, if you're in physical trouble and you need help, you dial 911, we'll get you the help. There's other kind of questions. If some of that stuff can be answered through 211, a lot of it can be.
Thank y'all. Neil?
Thank y'all very much. That's it. Thank you.
Sheriff,